Hello, welcome to Big Bang Radio Spotlights. This is a show where we talk to independent artists from all around the world, all about their music and their process for making it. I'm your host, Isaac Anderson, and today I get to sit down with Nick from the band Islands. Without any further ado, here's the interview. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Super excited to talk to you because you're super legendary in the indie scene, and I want to talk all about the music stuff, but I want to first talk about your musical beginnings. So I was wondering, what is your earliest musical memory?
I have this memory of dancing to Michael Jackson I must have been like 3 or something, dancing to Michael Jackson in my living room, and like unencumbered, completely free, and looking up and seeing my parents through the door watching me. I guess it was a glass door or something, but they were peeking in and watching me and laughing. And I guess that was the first time I felt shame, as well as discovered the joy of unbridled, exuberant dance. And then I have some, and then I remember we were in the backseat. I was in the backseat of the car. We would drive I lived in in the country, and we would drive to the nearest town on Vancouver Island, kind of a rural part of Canada. And, there was always like it was like Billy Joel or Paul Simon's Graceland was a big one, Fleetwood Mac. So I definitely remember these songs kind of being piped in to my little consciousness, and like really, really reacting, especially to Paul Simon stuff, feeling like a real emotional pull to all that music.
How exactly did you get started playing music? Like, did anybody in your family play music? Like, did you have family members that like kind of got you into, or is this something you discovered on your own?
I think I just was really, in the teenage years, I got really into certain bands, and would sort of daydream about being on stage. Really into my favorite bands were like Jane's Addiction and this British band James. So I would just like daydream about being on stage, and I didn't play any instruments, but I moved to this new town, and for the first few years were really tough. I was sort of bullied quite relentlessly, but then I met these punk kids who played in punk bands, and I hung out with them, and kind of just sort of through osmosis just sort of figured out how to make that transition to the stage, even though it was a community center kind of stage with like 8 people in it or something. But seeing these new friends of mine doing it, playing music in their basement and playing little punk gigs, $5 punk shows, that I was starting to go to as well, felt like I could bridge that divide. I could be not just a viewer, but a participant.
Well, do you remember the first time that you became like a participant, like not only a participant, but like the main focus of a show, like when you got up and started performing on stage? Like, what was that experience like the first time you got up there and like got out of the crowd and on the stage?
Yeah, I do remember very much. I was I started a band with my high school friend, and we ended up it ended up morphing into the Unicorns. I went to high school with Alden, my frontman of that band, and we were playing music together, and we booked a show, and at this community center. There was probably like 10 people there, but it didn't matter. It just felt like such a powerful feeling to be up on stage, and I really wanted to sing like Peter Murphy, the singer from Bauhaus. So we had this kind of a goth band, really silly songs, but sort of tongue in cheek. And it was very silly and probably embarrassing, but it was such a fun, perfect release. And it was immediately like, I felt like I wanted to be doing that forever. So that sort of set me on my path, was playing with Alden, and then eventually we kept playing together and started the Unicorns, and then that led me here basically. So.
Walls, cave, turns, refuse to wait. Hallway. Do it for your love. Do it for your love. Do
What was that conversation like to be like, oh, we're going to end this group and start like another group? What was that conversation like to you guys?
So yeah, the end of 2004, the Unicorns broke up, and I knew it was coming, but I wasn't into it. I didn't want to break up. I wanted to keep the band going. We were getting momentum. We were finding our path. It felt like everything was just getting better, and we were figuring it out and getting better at playing and performing, but we just weren't really getting along on a personal level. So while the creative side of things was blossoming, the personal relationship was crumbling. So it was not my decision to end the band. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to ride this wave. So Jamie, the drummer, and I decided, hey, let's, we like playing together. We have a good thing going. Let's just keep going. Let's just build off of this. So in January 2005, we made the decision to start working towards what was the first record. We came down to LA. We were in Montreal at the time, or we'd previously been based out of there. And January in Montreal is an absolute nightmare. It's just an unending blizzard. So we decided to decamp to LA. We had a friend there, and he let us crash with him. And we just started to piece this project together. It didn't have a name. It didn't have, it had a few songs that I had sort of saved for the next Unicorns record. It was like, well, let's take some songs that we'd even performed live in our final months of touring with the Unicorns. So I brought those over, and we just started building up what would be the first record. So it was a pretty seamless transition, honestly.
When it comes to you creating music, just in general, do you tend to try to set aside time specifically to create, or do you kind of let the music just kind of happen sporadically?
It kind of all happens in a weird blur. Like, it honestly sort of, when I'm really in the flow state of creating songs, there's like sort of a trance-like quality to it. And I'm not fully, it sounds a little woo, but I'm just sort of receiving the ideas, not receiving it necessarily from some other realm, but just kind of doing less frontal lobe stuff, I guess. I'm not as conscious of how the thing is being structured. I'm just sort of using intuition and feeling as a guide. I'm just kind of like, this feels good, this feels bad, keep going, stop, and just kind of let it flow. And so I don't really have a real process, but you pick up a guitar and you find some nice chords, and then you find like you just find like a little melody and just figure it out, feel what sounds good, feel it out, and then just let the rest just kind of wash over you.
Beautiful. That's really beautiful. Well, when it comes to your lyricism and everything, do you have like a pretty set way you like to kind of write from? I know some people are really like, I only like writing things that I know and I experience, and other people are like, I just want to go for the phonetic thing and kind of have this figurative story. I don't know. How does that work for you, like when you write your lyrics?
Well, I don't like to repeat myself too much, I heard an interview with Brian Eno recently, and he said there's two kinds of artists. There's the frontiersmen, the pioneers, and then the farmers, the ones who want to just kind of keep tilling the soil and perfecting this thing, and then the ones who want to go out and discover new ground, new territory. And I sort of gravitate, I kind of find myself in the middle sometimes. I liked the idea of fine-tuning something, but I'm much more interested in trying new things. So I'm not always going to want to do the same thing, repeat the same thing. I think that's as evidenced by the catalog. You can look at the records and they all sort of have a different approach and different sort of concept, I think, sonically and otherwise. But I think I like to sometimes write from a really personal place. And then I also sometimes like to just, what's kind of the most fun is just to inhabit or embody another persona, and just kind of tell a story maybe that's outside of my own experience, but maybe metaphorically kind of links up, but has its own kind of drama to it that I haven't necessarily lived through, but it's just lyrical devices, you know, like robbing a bank or something. These kinds of like just visual kind of settings, place settings that I can kind of work from. It's just like a nice, I guess, starting point sometimes.
We mentioned it a little earlier, but your first album, Return to the Sea, has made a lasting impression on the indie music scene. You being in that place in that time, what were some big takeaways from that era for you? Like, what are some moments and memories that like really stuck with you from around that time?
Probably the touring we did in Europe that summer from that first record. Yeah, there was a lot of momentum, and we were kind of riding the momentum from the Unicorns, I think. And we got there was a lot of goodwill, I guess. And I think, you know, the record, for whatever reason, I wasn't fully aware of why, but the record resonated with people. You know, it was a long time ago now. It's 15 years ago now, so I don't necessarily have a handle on what I was doing then. I think so much of it was naivete. Like, I wasn't coming from a place of expertise or experience. It was only really my first real time in the studio, and even then we made most of the beds, like the main stuff, in studio, and then we did so much of it in Jamie's bedroom. The overdubs, a lot of the overdubs, guitars, some guitars, a lot of vocals were done in his apartment in Montreal. So it was still like one foot in this very sort of lo-fi DIY kind of thing, but we were sort of trying to like burst out of that that cage and kind of make a sort of a bold statement. So we put together a band when we finished the record. We put together this big 7 or 8 piece at one point band, and we were playing these large festivals in Europe that were really fun. And you know, I was 23 or 24, so it didn't feel much didn't feel much in the way of modesty. Felt very like I belonged there, which is a damn good feeling. And I think when you're young, you can really channel that. And so I remember just feeling really like secure with where we were at. And I thought we made a great record, and we were playing these nice big shows, and it was a good time, but it was a long time ago.
Heard that. Well, I want to mention your new album that's just come out. It's called Islomania. The album is full of a lot of awesome songs and produced by a lot of awesome people. And what was the process of making that like? And what does this record mean to you?
I wanted to do something a little different than I'd done before. It was kind of like, you know, George Costanza in Seinfeld, when he realizes if he does the opposite of every instinct he has, things start to go his way. So I decided I wanted to do something kind of similar, where I would, instead of just going into a studio for 3 weeks at a time and banging out an album, I wanted to make this kind of slow, you know, piece by piece, incremental approach to making a record. So I went in with Chris Cody, just with closed captioning. That was the first song we did for the record. I was like, let's just make this song. And then Mike Stroud from Rat-a-Tat played on that. So he was in town. He was in LA when we did that. And he came in to Sunset Sound, where Chris was, played on that. And then he invited me to his studio in the Catskills, and we made Passionate Age. So I was just sort of following this tether. I was just going with whatever was coming my way. And then I was still building the record. I didn't know what was the next step, who I was going to work with. And I started to get friendly with Patrick Ford, and we decided to do a session together and bring in the full band. So that's when the full band came on board. And we kind of made the rest of the record. And then in like little sessions, we did it live, and then we kind of tweaked all the sounds. Patrick was a big part of that, sort of post-production part of making the songs. So yeah, it was a long process, and it just feels like it was a really interesting way to do it. I also like going into the studio with parameters, like we have 3 weeks, we have to make a record, but I just wanted to try something new. And so I think it's what I needed. I needed a new approach to making records, to feel inspired and to feel engaged with it, you know?
Well, if people want to keep up with Islands and everything you guys are doing, how can they find you online?
The website, islandsareforever.com, you can check out like tour dates and buy the record from there and buy shirts and towels and all sorts of silly stuff. Yeah, you can find us all over the place. Google, you know, if you want.
Heard that. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a blast talking to you. It's an honor to get to talk to you because you are a super awesome guy and a super awesome musician. And I have one more question for you before you leave. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched a Big Bang Radio Spotlight before, but I'm a musician, but I also love film. And I believe musicians are connected with film in a certain way that other people really aren't. And I always ask the musicians before they go, what is your favorite movie?
There's my pretentious answer, which is Fassbinder's Ali Fear the Soul. And then I also really love one of my favorite movies, all-time movies that I think I could watch 100 times is Spinal Tap. It's just so good. So funny, still so funny.
Thanks to Nick for sitting down with us and talking all about Islands music. If you guys want to see more interviews just like this, you can find us online at Studio 67 NCC. Thank you all for watching. I'm Isaac Anderson, and until next time, stay lovely.